Welcome to our Greek class, Learning New Testament Greek with Jacob Kasule. Just a quick review on what we covered in Lesson 4. We were looking at diphthongs. And at the end of Lesson 4, we covered diphthongs, and we say the diphthong coming out of the vowels happens. A diphthong is when two vowel letters combine into one syllable. Now remember, each of the letters of the vowel has its own unique sound. And so when those two letters are put together into a syllable, one syllable, the sound of both of those letters is going to come out. And so diphthong comes from the Greek word diphthongos, which means to have two sound. And we say there are 7 diphthongs, and we covered it. And again, just a quick one. Remember, these are the diphthongs we covered. Again, remember, in this section is where we are having the diphthongs, and then in this is how you'd pronounce how the two sound of these vowel letters that have been put together is pronounced, and the example of the Greek word that has such a diphthong. And so just to go through our Greek vocabulary in the examples of this diphthong, just to remind you of its pronunciation. So you know this is ion, which is age, rene, peace, oikos, which is house, uios, which is son, autos, self, hulogetos, praise or blessed be, oranos. So again, I'm emphasizing this so you're able to see the sound of the diphthongs. So this is alpha, iota, ion, age, epsilon, iota, rene, peace, omicron, iota, oi, cause you hear the omicron sound, iota sound, oikos, like oil, right? Uios, upsilon, iota, omicron, sigma, uios, sun, alpha, upsilon, autos, self, epsilon, upsilon, hulogetos, epsilon, upsilon, and then the last oranos, heaven, right? So this is diphthong. And so today in this lesson, we get to look at the Greek punctuations and the different marks that Greek uses. And the first of those punctuations, the first we'll deal with is the mark, very simple, is what we call the breathing marks. The breathing marks. Okay, now the breathing marks that Greek has, there are two kind at least. There's what we call the rough breathing mark and a smooth breathing mark. So there's rough breathing mark and this rough breathing mark. So think of drawing, if you were writing an English letter, English word, and where you put apostrophe. So instead of the apostrophe, so think of, I'm going to kind of draw this, make it bigger, just so you get to see what we're talking about here. So if you were having an apostrophe, but it's tilted facing the other way. So instead of that, it's facing the opposite direction. And so the rough breathing mark we're talking about is that, the first one, this one. Now, the way the rough breathing mark is used, it's used, number one, to indicate that the letter punctuation. So when it's used, it's going to be put on top of a letter, and we're going to explain that just in a little bit. The rough breathing mark shows that the word that is having that breathing mark, when you're pronouncing it, it's going to have an initial H sound. It indicates that the word, that particular word that is having the breathing mark, is pronounced with an initial H sound. That means even though the letter itself will not be there, when it is being pronounced, it's going to be there. And we're going to give an example of how that is used in a little bit. Then, number 2, the second type of breathing mark is smooth. Smooth breathing mark. Now, the smooth breathing mark is the one that is written like the normal apostrophe. Like the normal apostrophe, that one. Okay, so you notice the rough is the opposite, it's facing the opposite direction. The smooth is facing the direction of the apostrophe. Now, so the smooth breathing mark, when it's used, it indicates that the word lacks or does not have an H sound, meaning the pronunciation, the word is exactly the way it's written. So the word is exactly as it is written. Okay, now here are example of how the rough breathing mark and the smooth breathing mark appears. So an example for us is here, right? So we have N, which epsilon nu with a rough breathing mark, okay? And we're going to have epsilon nu with a smooth breathing mark. All right. Now, epsilon nu with a smooth breathing mark, when you are pronouncing, remember we say the rough breathing mark, this one will give you an initial silent H sound. Then now we interpret this next, which is epsilon nu. And so literally this word therefore is actually pronounced as hen, like a hen, like you're talking about a chicken in its pronunciation. Okay, so the presence of the H here, I'm putting it in this quote for a reason. The presence of the H here is given to us by the presence of this rough breathing mark. And then the smooth breathing mark, we said, it indicates that the word that is in question does not have this initial silent H sound, and therefore the word sound as it is. And so in this case, it is the en. And so you notice that even though the Greek form is the same, and just the difference is in the mark it gives, the meaning of these two are not the same. Hen with a H sound, rough breathing mark, actually mean one in Greek. Then this, which is the epsilon nu en, actually means in, like the one would say in the beginning. Right, so you see the difference, and as we go along with our lesson, when we begin getting into the inflections and getting more and more vocabularies, we're going to use it a lot more, and so then it's going to get more easier. in recognizing and identifying it. And so we're going to begin seeing a lot of this writings indicated there for us with the breathing marks, which is smooth breathing marks and a rough breathing marks. Okay, now also the way it is also written. Now, if remember we just spoke about diphthong, we said the vowel, two vowels sound put together to form one syllable. If the word in question begins with a syllable, with a diphthong, then the presence of the breathing mark is put on the second letter, not on the first. So let me put as a note here. As a note, if the word begins with a diphthong, then the breathing mark, whether it's rough or smooth, the rough or the smooth breathing mark is put on the second letter of the word, which would be the second letter of the diphthong, which is the formation of it. Now, here's an example of what we are saying. Let's write an example for us here is the word, we already spoke about this when we're looking at diphthong. Hyologia, hyologithos, hiu, epsilon, upsilon. You notice this is a diphthong. Hyolo, then lambda, omicron, gamma, heta, tau, omicron, sigma, hyologithos. Okay, so now, which we say means blessed or praise. All right. Now this word, so if the breathing mark is appearing, and in this case it has the breathing mark, which is a smooth breathing mark, would appear on here, on the second letter. This is what we're meaning. So not on the first, is on the second letter. So hyologithos. So again, you'll notice this, and since it's a smooth breathing mark, that mean when you're pronouncing this, you're not going to give it a H sound. So it is not hehulogithos because there's no H sound. But you get the point we're making here, that when it's a diphthong, then the breathing mark is going to appear on the second letter of that word, which if you look at the diphthong, the second letter of the diphthong, which is part of the stem of the word being modified that we're talking about. Okay, now the only difference, however, is, so this rule applies only except for if, however, in this note, however, if the word does not have a diphthong and begins with a capital, with capital letter, then the breathing mark is put on the first letter of the word. Okay, so it's not beginning with a diphthong, it's having a capital letter, so it'll begin with, it will put on the first letter, at the back of the first letter. Actually, not so much on it. So let's say if this was the letter, So it's not, it's on, let me at least explain it. Let's put on it to the left side. Put on the first letter of the word on the left side of the letter. Okay, now that is better. So an example is this. We're having the word epsilon, beta, rho, alpha, iota, omicron, sigma. Okay, now this, hopefully you can, let's first do a transliteration, is epsilon, beta, which is EB, rho, which is equivalent to R, alpha A, iota I, omicron O, and S, Hebraios, where we get the word Hebrew. Okay, right? Now, this is written with a rough breathing mark. So notice we're saying it's not a diphthong, and it's going to be written on the first letter but on the left side. So in this case, you notice where the diphthong is, the breathing mark is, it is written on the first letter, which is epsilon, but on the left side, not on the right side, not on top of it. Hopefully you're getting that, right? Another example 2 is alpha, beta, and rho, and alpha, double alpha, then mu. Again, you notice this. For now, at least just to be able to help you identify with its equivalent, we do a transliteration. A alpha for A, and then beta for B, rho R, then double A, then M, Abraham. Abraham. All right. Now, you notice that even though we write with an English H in the middle of the 2A, Greek wouldn't have it, but it has something put on it. Okay, so with this, again, the mark would be on the side. The first letter on the left side. So the presence of smooth, remember this one is smooth. The smooth breathing mark. This one is rough breathing mark. Rough breathing mark, we say it gives you an H sound, which that is why even though it's written without an H sound, when it's pronounced, it's with a Hebrew sound, H sound. Smooth breathing mark, we said no H sound, and so that's why it's not Abraham is not having the sound of the letter H. Okay, so you get the idea. So that is with the breathing mark. Now, next in all of this, the next is the Greek punctuation, which is very, very important. And so the next is the Greek punctuation. Okay, now the way it is yesterday. So first, let's start with the easy one. So, comma, the comma, which is like that, and period, or what we'll call full stop, it's used the same way. So this too is used in similar, don't even know what I'm writing here. Used in a similar form like English. Okay, so where you find a comma in Greek, it's just like how you'd use comma in English. Where you find a period, or what we call full stop, is how you'd use a period or full stop in English. Okay, now the two difference here is this: when you find this, so in English we have semicolon it's usually written with a single L, not a double L. Semicolon, which is this, okay, and you find something instead of, when colon in English is written like this, right? Now, you're going to find something like this one. Now, this in Greek, what appears as a semicolon in English, in Greek it is question mark. So when you find something like this, which is in English it's a semicolon, in a Greek text it is not a semicolon, it is a question mark. Now, when you find, if you're going to look for colon, which is like for listing things and all of those, you're probably going to be looking for something like this. But in Greek, it does not have. So instead of these two dots here, Greek has the upper one, the upper dot without the lower one. And so literally, you're just going to find a dot at the end of the letter. And so let's say colon dot, like that. Sorry. You're not going to find a lower one. So it's almost going to appear like a mistake, like it was just a typo, but it's not. So you find a word and then a dot on top of it, like that. That is a colon. And so you're going to probably find a listing of things following. So something like that, word, and word being listed. Okay. So you notice the difference. For what appears like a semicolon in English is a question mark in Greek. What should be a semicolon, for Greek, it's like semicolon but without the lower dot. So again, that is very, very important to note and recognize. All right. So far we've seen, as far as punctuation is concerned, we have 4 Greek punctuations, which is the comma, used like it is used in English, which is the period or full stop, used like it is used in English, then the semicolon in English, which for Greek it's equivalent and represents its use as a question mark. Then what is supposed to be a colon has the top dot without the lower one written like this, and that is for colon in Greek, and it's not a mistake when you find that. Okay, now there are 2 more punctuations and marks that we're to look at, especially marks, and that is the Greek diacritical mark, the Greek diacritical marks. Now, this one's actually interesting. The diacritical marks there are 3 diacritical marks, which now is going to be interesting as we look at them. The first diacritical mark is apostrophe. Diacritical mark number 1 is apostrophe, which is the exact what we're seeing. Okay, now here's where you're going to find the difference in how apostrophe as a diacritical mark is used different from the breathing mark. Remember, a breathing mark, a smooth breathing mark, is written like apostrophe. Okay, now apostrophe is used to indicate an omission. Omission. That something has been left out. Okay, used to indicate an omission. And so what it means is, and the good thing is, the omission is used for the last letter. An omission of a last letter or a final short vowel. Now, when it's used, we're going to see an example. So, when apostrophe is used to omit, to let go from the word elido, mean to I leave out. When apostrophe is used to leave out or letter, so first rule. Okay, number 1, it is used on the last letter of a word. Okay. Secondly, it's used when that last letter is a vowel. And thirdly, is used when following, okay, the first rule number 1 and 2, used when, not with, used when the immediate word, and what I'm meaning by immediate word is the word that is coming after this particular word that we are modifying with the apostrophe. When the immediate word begins with a vowel or a diphthong. Okay, so now we're saying there are 3 rules that is followed on how apostrophe is used for meeting letters. First of all, it's only used on the last letter of a word. Notice that. Secondly, that last letter being used must be a vowel letter, any of the vowel letters. And then thirdly, even if the last letter in a word is vowel, for it to be used, it requires that after this word, the next word, the immediate word, is beginning either with a vowel or with a diphthong. So that means even if a word ends with a vowel, but the next word that is following, the immediate word after that particular word that ends with a vowel, does not begin with a vowel or a diphthong, then you don't use apostrophe to leave a letter out. Okay, so here is an example. I hope we've gotten this. So here is an example. And so we have dear Otto. Okay, so dear Otto, which is dear through Otto, him. We're going to again look at how we're getting this in the following the lessons that will come later. But so we're saying for apostrophe as to be used in a meeting letter, that the last letter in a word, so this is a word, dear is a word, you notice the last letter is a vowel, okay? And we're saying rule number 3, that word that is following after this particular one, okay, must either begin with a vowel or a diphthong. And so you notice this is a diphthong, okay? So now we're seeing this double here. So what Greek does, Greek will put apostrophe here, okay, and then the alpha in the dear becomes silent, and so then you would have something like this: delta, alpha, and then the apostrophe, and then auto. Then you have the auto. That's what we're talking about. Okay, so when you find apostrophe, which so already it's very easy to identify, because then you know these conjunctions, preposition, all of those is following a noun or a verb that is beginning with a diphthong or a vowel. It's very easy to identify and recognize a letter that has been left out. And so instead of dear auto, and then it's now dear auto, but it's still the same. Now, leaving out does not change the meaning. Does not change the meaning of the word. It just affects the writing, and then you need to be able to identify. So you notice now, one thing to emphasize, we say the apostrophe, okay? So the apostrophe here, as when it's used as an omission, is used at the end of the word, as on the last letter of the word. Then the smooth breathing mark is used at the beginning. You notice the difference? Breathing mark, beginning. Apostrophe, end of the word. Hopefully you get the difference. And very, very important, something to recognize and identify. Okay, and so the second last of we say the diacritical marks are 2, right? And so the second is, so the first one we've been speaking about is apostrophe. The second mark is called diaeresis. Again, I didn't begin this name. Okay. Now, the diaeresis is a dot on top like that. Okay. Now, this occurs where two vowels that usually would combine to form a diphthong are to be pronounced separately. Okay, two vowels that normally or usually normally combined to form a diphthong is pronounced separately. Okay, now let me explain that a little bit. Okay, so when we were looking at a diphthong, for a diphthong, it says two vowels. Okay, so a diphthong are two vowels that forms one syllable. Okay, and so then like autos, oikos, uios, eirene, Oranois, you get two vowels forming one syllable, and so even though the sound of both letters still strong and unique, it is pronounced together. Now, when diaeresis is used, these two dots here, when it's used on a diphthong, it's telling you, even though the usual normal rule is that a diphthong, each of the sound of the letter is going to be pronounced but as one syllable. When a diphthong is used, a diphthong is telling you that the sound of those letters that in the diphthong is going to be separate, which means there's going to be a prolonging. Like letter 1 is going to sound by itself, then there's like a gap, like a breather, and then letter 2, and then you continue. Okay, so it's like you give the sound of letter 1, pause, take a breath, and then sound of the letter 2, which is still part of the vowel in the diphthong. Okay, so one of the words I can give you is this name. An example for us is here in this name. And so with a smooth breathing mark, sigma, alpha, iota, alpha, sigma. Okay, now for this, then there is the, let me put it as a dot so that you're not confused. Sorry, alpha, iota, sorry, and then there's this dot, and then there's this dot. You see that now that's the diaeresis that we're talking about. Now, what it means, so of course, this word is where we get, sorry, it's supposed to be S. Isaiah, right? Isaiah or Isaiah. Isaiah. Even if you try to pronounce it in the native dialect, one of the local dialects, Ichaya, Isaiah, Isaiah, right? So now the reason, so you notice when you get to the A, I, and A, there's like a pause here in this. E. So even if you were to write it, how would, like in a local dialect, so you hear Ichaya, Ichaya. There's a pause, right? Isaiah. There's a pause between in this alpha, iota, alpha, AIA, which is here. And so we're seeing the diphthong, like these two letters, which is two vowels together, even though it's in the middle, of course, of this noun. And so the use of diaeresis is telling us the presence of this two dot here is in your pronunciation of this name. When you come to where the dot appears, you're going to prolong that sound before you continue to the next. So it's almost like beginning soft down, a sigh, yeah. You notice? Hi, yeah. Isaiah. Pause, prolong, and then each of this is pronounced. And so that is how diaeresis is used. And it's, of course, it's unique in its own way. And so this is the diacritical mark. So the last of this diacritical mark that I spoke about is called coronis. Even though it's not used as much, in English because of how in Greek, because of how Greek uses its inflection. But I'm still going to put it here anyway. Number 3 is corones. I hope your mind is not going to corona. Now, here's why it's not used that much, because Greek doesn't use it. But corones is also just like apostrophe. Okay. Now, this used to be used a lot in the ancient writings in Greek. Now, it's used when it's used indicates the combination of two words with the loss of an immediate letter or letters. Now, similar to mingling, now the way this is used, this used to be, let me put it that way, the way coronas used to be used, it used to be used for contraction. Of letters. Very similar to how today, and let me just give you an English example. Okay. And so, like writing I am, and then you just put the I and then the apostrophe and then am. And so, telling you a contraction, a mingling of two words is put together. Or I cannot to I can't. Again, you notice instead of cannot, it's now can't. Two words have been mingled together, joined together, and therefore some letters have been left out to put it, and yet you still understand the meaning when you say it. I do not, and you say I don't. You get the idea. So this is how coronis was used. But now Greek is highly inflected. Doesn't use that much, but there are a few cases, a few incidents where you're going to find it, and we're going to visit this in the later times when we find it. Okay. The last, so maybe I can give one. No, let me not do that, because we still need to look at some other contractions and combinations. But here is an example. Kai kanos, kago, and ego. Includes I and he. Since we've not spoken about the endings and vocabularies and inflections, let me not give that example. Let's look at the last of the marks, which is the Greek accent marks. And so that is number 4, the Greek accent marks. Now, Greek has 3 accent marks. I think you're seeing how broadly and richly the Greek language is. So Greek has 3 accent marks. These accent marks are, number 1, it's called acute accent mark. Acute accent mark is just like a stroke, like that, facing. So you notice it's facing the right. The second type of accent marks is called the grave accent mark. And it's, so think of the acute, just turn the opposite, turn the direction. Instead of it's the stroke facing right, let it face left, like that. Then the third is called circumflex. Circumflex as a accent mark is something like that, like a canopy on top. Now, the purpose of the accent marks are twofold. Okay, purpose of the accent marks is, number one, it occasionally, and this is important, it occasionally distinguishes between words that are otherwise between words that are identical. Okay, and number two, it indicates which of the syllables which syllable in a word, in a Greek word, is to be stressed in a Greek word is to be stressed in pronunciation. When you're pronouncing, which of those words are you supposed to stress out when you pronounce? Okay, so here is at least a quick example for us is so in how the first usage appears. And so there are these two words which are all the same. So there is a, okay, epsilon iota. Now the first epsilon iota is written with just that, okay. Now the next is written still with the apostrophe, but then with a circumflex. Okay. Now this one, A, means if. This one with the circumflex means you are. Second person. Now, in our next lesson, we are actually going to now get into inflection, and when we get into the inflection, we're going to recognize the first, second, third person singular and the plural to understand the suffixes, its ending, and identify. That's when we're going to talk about this and why we're saying this is second person you are. Okay, but for now, just wanted to show you that the presence of this. Now, the good thing is, right now, don't worry. You're probably already saying, okay, this is confusing. How am I going to be able to identify this? Okay, the good thing is, because Greek is highly inflected and it uses amalgamation, it uses merging, joining of words, and continuing to build it by adding prefix, infix, or suffix, a letter, group of letters at the stem of the word, in the middle of it, or at the end of it to give a meaning, to give a tense, a number, or even a gender. We, at least the A, this for you are, you're not going to find it alone. It's going to be as a suffix, okay, as a suffix onto an existing stem. The if is the one that you're going to find that is used as a standalone. So don't worry, when we get to the next lesson for inflection, you're actually going to be able to tell the difference and recognize it. So for now, just wanted to show you these differences. Okay, so for your vocabulary, for practice, here is assignment. your vocabularies. Okay, now the purpose is learning to write it and learning to pronounce it and being able to identify it. And so we're going to first get into some of the similar words that have similarity with English and what you already know. And so one is apostolos. Apostolos, you notice very similar to apostle. Two is soma. Soma, which now the soma is actually written with omega. Soma. So you're going to notice some of these marks. We're going to talk about it when we do our review in our next lesson. Soma means body, of course, in Luganda, and Swahili means to study or to read. The third is phone, phi. At least you remember that, which is sound. Okay. Now, as you think of this for body, I don't know why I wrote border. For summer, body. So think of somatic, right? For sound, think of phone. What comes out of your phone, right? The fourth is cardia, kappa, alpha, delta, delta, iota, alpha, cardia. Okay, with that mark, which is where we get the word heart. Okay, now think of cardiac. Or we say cardiac arrest, something connected to the heart. The next is number 5, is phobos. So phi, beta, omicron, sigma. Phobos, think of phobia. Okay, phobos, fear. Because what is phobia? Right? So you notice, I think you're beginning to notice the examples with the similarities, at least with what we have in the English words. Number 6 is genos. Genos, epsilon, nu, omicron, sigma, genos. And that is res. Think of at least English genius, right? Then the number 7 is a name, which hopefully should be able to identify and recognize, is Philippos, double pi omicron sigma. Philippos, iota, and it has that mark, and it is the name Philip. Okay, number 8 is Exodus, epsilon, that omicron, delta, omicron, sigma, which is departure. But you can think of, so notice how the word Exodus is actually Greek in its origin, at least in its root. The next is number 9, is Zoe with that zeta, omega, eta, which is life. But you can think of zoology. What is zoology? Right? Number 10 is pater. Pater, which is father, and think of partano. Partano from pater. 11, think of gune. Okay, gune is woman, but also think of gynecology. 12 is Petros. And think of, it is Peter, right? 13 is Theos. Which is God. You can think of theology. And 14 is succès, soul, and you can think of psychology. Two more. At least this next 15 is Polish, where we get the word city, and you can think of political. 16, and lastly is, this is row. Let me write it well. Lastly is, can you identify that? Christos. Christos is Christ. Okay, so please take time and review, go through these vocabularies. The goal is, like I was doing, learn to write the Greek, and so that you're able to identify its life. So what you should do, write the Greek. As you follow this lesson, you can even pause the video here, copy it, write the Greek and write the English, and then to be able to remember later, what you'll do is just write the Greek somewhere on a flashcard, on a new separate piece of paper, just the Greeks without the English, and then after you've written it, try to answer, try to put its English meaning, what it mean in English. So like you write Theos, and then after you've written all of them, Christos, Polis, Suxi, Theos, but Petros, Gune, Pater, Zoe, Exodus, Philippos, Apostolos, all of those, then now you sit just with the Greek text, vocabularies you've written, then try to put its meaning as you remember them. Try to look at this, think of how you can remember. And then after you've done it, then you can go back and check how you've done. Now, if you are doing this lesson as a group, then when you sit, You do it, then you give your friend to grade you as they check, and you grade them. And then after that, what you do, you write the English, and then just on another piece of paper again, and then you try to write what this English, so like life. What is the Greek word for life? Zoe. So you do write father. What is Greek word? Pater. Peter, what's the Greek word? Petros. God, what's the Greek word? Theos. Christ, Christos. Woman, Gnei. Right. And so you do that way, you'll be remembering, teaching yourself to identify the Greek and remember its English, do the English, and be able to translate and interpret it back to the Greek. And that is going to help you. So review this, and if you've watched from lesson 1 to now lesson 5, then I hope that you've continued to do the assignments and exercise that you continue to also practice the alphabets, writing it, identifying it, and recognizing it. Okay, so please do this, and all the best as you continue learning this lesson. And I'll see you in our next one. God bless you.